I think while Aryan presents it, I think the growth happens always when you get into the uncomfortable zone. I mean, there is no growth happening when you're comfortable, isn't it? So I love what Aryan spoke about. He's getting into the not safe zone. I think that's where growth happens. So I love that, Aryan.
All right.
Wonderful.
Can you see my
Oh,
screen?
yes, we can.
Yes,
Slowly killing
yes.
your business. Oh my God. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So that's quite a statement. And as I already mentioned, I'm Dutch, so I'm going right for the throat and say, okay, this is my thinking, but I know I'm making a lot of assumptions. I'm making assumptions about what you think is solution thinking. And you'll probably start to make assumptions on how can this be killing my business because the solution is the answer. So before we go any further, I want to have a clear definition of solution thinking. So, one of the solution thinking definitions that I found is that it's a mindset and approach to focus on identifying and implementing effective solutions rather than dwelling on problems. So, this actually scared me because for me, this is saying, oh, okay, let's ignore the problems and be purely focused on solutions. So this was not what I was expecting as being the definition. Another one was even what I call more pink. Let's be positive. Yeah, let's not think about all the doom and gloom. Let's really focus on the solutions and the options that we have in the future. And really, let's work with what we know because this is about staying in the safe zone. We use what we know. What I was looking for was more like this. That solution thinking is that we identify problems we need to solve or the opportunities that we can realize, and then we suggest what solutions can achieve this. Yeah, so this is really my definition of solution thinking, and I hope that you can find yourself in it. Does that resonate, Peter?
It almost seems backwards to me. Am I, you're saying identify the problems we need to solve by suggesting solutions how to achieve this. It is it feels a little bit backwards. Can you give me a real life example or an example of a problem you could solve that way?
So think about uh, the competitor has dropped its prices.
Yes, big problem.
Yeah, that's a problem that we need to solve, or potentially an opportunity. So the next step in the process is that people start to provide possible solutions.
Okay, so is it because they're providing solutions because of thinking it's an opportunity, not a problem?
Both. So it could be that they say, we need to do something. What are we going to do to not be behind the competition? So any strategic insight of how we can turn this ship around.
Hmm. Very interesting. I think of the U.S. election and people suddenly saying it presents a whole series of problems, one way or the other, when it comes to my business, with the
Yeah,
potential of new tariffs being added.
yeah,
But the fact is, it is the new world. Full stop. You adapt. You be flexible. You find ways around it. And
okay.
am I thinking things in the right way?
Yeah, so what do you need to adapt?
I need uh, uh, more different ways to bring things in. I need better labeling so that I can be more clear about my compliance to reduce tariffs that way.
Yeah,
And I need other markets.
so you're talking about solutions.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah, and this is how your thinking works. Yeah,
yes, yeah.
that's exactly how I look at it. So
Interesting.
my point is that this is the wrong approach.
Interesting.
We've learned all our lives to approach things like this. We have a problem, we have a situation that has changed. How are we going to solve this so that we're back on track again, whatever that is? Yeah. And
Can I take a moment, Aryan,
yeah,
to properly introduce you?
yeah,
So to set the context for everyone watching as well. Also, this will be watched in the future setting as well.
Yeah,
So I want to
sure.
make sure I do the due diligence. So bear with me for a second.
yeah,
I
yeah.
just wanted to introduce you properly, Peter, if you don't mind. So Aryan, I struggle with your last name. Is it like Noordhoek?
Noordhoek.
Noordhoek. Yeah, I was playing with the Google Translate last night from a Dutch name, right?
Yeah,
uh,
it means north corner.
North corner. Okay, there you go. So this is Aryan Noordhoek joining us from New Zealand, from north of Auckland, from a charming town north of Auckland. What I love about Aryan is like when I first met Aryan, I always see a sense of calm, a cheerful smile, which I've already seen so far. And I loved his keynote at the event where we met at the event modeling and conference event at Vancouver. That Adam Dimitrick and his team put together. So that's where I met Aryan. So it was lovely meeting you there. Something I really enjoyed uh, after the keynote is Aryan helped us set up a beer brewing business in 20 minutes from end to end. Are you remember that? Like from beer requested all the way until beer consumed. If someone was setting up a beer brewery business, that can be set up using the event modeling approach. And it was under 20 minutes, we were able to put things together. And and Peter, it has nothing to do with software whatsoever. This concept of event modeling and otherwise, which I will get into, has nothing to do with software or technology or anything. It's about looking at events, what is happening right from beer requested, that is an event, to all the way consuming a beer consumed, right? So that was beautiful. So I love that, Aryan, and I just want to introduce you properly. As we do that, let me play this again. I might want to play. Can you unshare for a moment? I would just want to be able to play this clip so that people get to see also your introduction. And sorry, guys, I just wanted to do it. Do the due diligence minimum possible from my side. So Aryan brings decades of experience across diverse roles. So he's been an enterprise architect. He's a technologist and managing machine language developer, spanning his experience across multinational corporations, across fast-growing startups. At the heart of his work is a passion for unraveling complex challenges, discovering the essence of a problem domain, and crafting elegant, simplified solutions. That's what Aryan is about. He's about simplifying things, right? He has spent about more than 20 years immersed himself into the event modeling and event model driven design and development. And Aryan now shares his wealth of experience with others, making the world of event driven architecture more accessible to everyone across the globe. So that's where Aryan is coming from. Aryan, sorry for the interruption. Please go ahead.
Right.
Welcome to the stage again.
Okay, let me. So, actually, the only thing we've done is setting the stage, and that we've got an agreement of the definition that we're talking about. Yeah? So, that solution thinking is what we've been taught all our lives, that when there are problems, we start with coming up with solutions. And my statement is that that actually is not the right way to do things. So let's first look at solutioning. Yeah, solutioning is that on one side we have the start of our solution, on the other side is our target where we want to be. And ideally, we go straight to the solution and we make certain that we have a lovely, happy customer. No problems, everything fine. The other side would be that we actually start in the wrong place and we end up nowhere and we won't have a happy customer. Simple. So this problem has existed for forever, and we've come up with all kinds of methodologies to solve this problem, to not end up in the wrong place, but have happy customers. So one of them was Agile. And Agile told us that the world would look like this. Would actually, even if we start in the wrong place, we're slowly moving in iterations up towards where we need to be. And yep, we arrive there in one line, in short steps, and we still have a happy customer. One thing has changed. Every step we've had to make changes so that we keep going in the right direction. That's what our learning during the iterations is. What we don't tend to see is that every change often means complexity, because we don't take the time to start over from the beginning, but we take our wrong assumptions with us, and wrong assumptions lead to increasing complexity. The reality of the world is that we go off in the wrong way, then we adjust, then we talk to our customers and we talk them a little bit towards our solution, but it's actually not quite there yet. So we do the next step, we adjust again, and then finally we actually arrive at where we almost need to be, and the customer is, okay, we'll live with it. This is the reality of how solutioning works. And the biggest problem is that there's that gap between where the customer wants to be, or the stakeholders, let's make it a little bit more generic, and where we, the solution provider, start. This is what's causing all kinds of problems, not just the fact that we've got increasing complexity, but there are actually all kinds of side effects besides a customer that says, okay, I'll accept this, but it wasn't what I really wanted. So the core of the problem is that solutions are always based on assumptions. Yeah, we try to imagine what will solve our problem. We've got no surety about it, and the customer also assumes that our solution will solve their problem. So we've got assumptions on both sides and a lot of uncertainty in between. So at least what we can try to do is have common assumptions. That helps a lot already, but it doesn't solve the real problem. Solutions are actually often influenced by bias. It's influenced by what we know and what we have confirmed in the past, so we tend to fall back on that knowledge. Yeah? Or, even worse, it often comes from the person that has the loudest voice in the room. And I know that because I've often been the loudest voice. I hardly ever gave other people the ability to come in and give their opinion about what the solution should be, and read the loudest voice also as the voice with the most power in the room. Yeah? A junior dev will hardly ever win from a senior dev. Even worse, the CTO steps in and gives his opinion of possible solutions. And then we actually spend a whole lot of time either to adjust ourselves to his thinking or have lots and lots of arguments around it. I think this is a really common pattern that we will see, regardless of what industry we're working. So what we have is actually a constant increase in complexity. And it's not simple complexity in the solution, it's also the increase in complexity in the communication with the stakeholders, and an increase in complexity with how we work together in our organization. So more and more aspects are being drawn into the process of solutioning. And the end result of all this is a lot of cost. And often the cost is hidden. So, what costs do we talk about? Well, they're the easy ones. Yeah, the budget overruns because it takes too long to get to the actual solution. And because it's taking so long, we lose market share. And due to the increase of complexity, it means that it's much harder and much more expensive to maintain things. But that's just one aspect. A much more important aspect, especially seen from your organization, because money is just money, is the impact on people. People will start to disengage. Why? Because they're not being heard. They're not part of the solution. It wasn't their solution, so they disengage. They don't believe in the solution anymore. They just show up. Or people have become the hero and they do deliver, but that means that the rest of the team says, okay, yep, he's the guy doing it all, and we're not important. And then at a certain point, those people also get ignored and they say, okay, I'm not appreciated anymore. Let's leave. The worst can be burnout. Those people that are the solution makers become the center of the solution, and they are a dependency for everything that happens around that solution, and the people burn out. And then lastly, we have the systems itself that become more and more complex, which potentially could also lead in more decrease in performance. So, question to the audience, Peter, Vijay, is this recognizable or am I making this up? Is this indeed a pattern that we see over and over again?
I see a lot of this stuff, and I also, as one of the noisy guys in the room, it's been problematic. Um, I, 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 I see you're also laying the stage here too. I am curious to see the full interpretation of your theory of how this
Yep.
can work, because I am my bias is what you've just described is what I always do. Although I
Okay.
hate the fact that you dropped the target. That part killed me a little bit. But that's the real McCoy. So what is the next step? BJ, what are your comments?
Yep.
Yeah, no, I love it because like often when projects are run, especially I often see a disconnect, and there is that vision right there that the leaders have, and there are business analysts and teams like that who are trying to help the business, and there are also people in the weeds trying to solve a technical problem or otherwise. And I often see a disconnect that the folks into the weeds often think, oh, the business folks doesn't understand our language, vice versa. So I think I think both from different teams should start speaking the same language. That's the real meaning of the team. The team should be singing in rhythm, right? They should be talking the same language. I think that's the silver lining.
Yeah. Yeah. You're spot on. And to be able to talk the same language and to understand each other, something really important is needed. And I'll talk about that next. Because as you understand, if you can't communicate, you lose control. And what happens in the end is actually, this is typical from IT, the big ball of mud stands for complexity. And what's happening
Love it.
here is actually people are fighting each other to give preference to their ball of mud. Yeah? They're not solving the real problem. They're just fighting about how they're going about with solving their problem. Yeah? And this ends up killing your business. Yeah? Because There's no communication anymore. There's distrust. There's no longer that inspiring environment where everybody is on the same page and moving forward, because there's a
These
key element missing.
these graphics are just sad. You made me feel really sad. There better be some
Yeah,
happy
yeah,
shit
yeah,
coming,
yeah.
okay?
Yes, yes. But there's hope. So, and I love to bring hope. So the next thing is actually, what's the alternative? And to be able to talk about the alternative, we need to first understand what is a solution actually. And a solution, this is a nice academic sentence, a solution is a system or a system of systems, which tells me nothing. Yeah. But it leads me to saying, okay, apparently I need to know what a system is. Yeah. And a system, again, a little bit academic, but the definition of a system is a group of interacting, interrelated components that form a complex and unified whole. Blah, 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 blah. I still don't understand anything, but perhaps with a picture, it becomes clearer. This is a system. Because we have the rocks working together with the table, we have a book stand. If I remove one of the rocks, and unfortunately AI wasn't smart enough to show me, the system breaks. It's no longer a system. It's no longer a book stand because the books will fall. So the components of table and rocks form a system that have an outcome that I can put the books in there. That's a system.
Mhm, mhm.
And that definition of a system can actually help us a step further, because a system is not just the sum of its parts. A system is the product of the interactions between the parts. It's how they interact with each other. If I have put the two stones further apart, there's no interaction. And there is no system. Because they're close together, they interact with each other as being a bookstand.
You got it.
So this is how I was diving deeper and deeper into what's the meaning of the words that I'm working with. What is it about solutions that is needed for me to find another approach that doesn't end in everybody sad? What will give them hope? And that, for me, oh, that's the next slide. Sorry, guys. I first dive a little bit deeper in what is an interaction and what is needed for an interaction. An interaction needs two systems, and only two systems. I will go a little bit deeper in that later, but for now it's really important. We have two systems, and a system can be a person, an organization, a bookstand, uh, ecosystem, the nature. They are all systems that have parts that are systems again. And when they interact with each other, they have an outcome. Something has happened when that interaction takes place. So, very important when we look at an interaction is that we understand the rules of that interaction. Yeah. What makes it possible that they have an interaction, and what influences what can happen. And very importantly is, who owns the rules? Who is the person that set those rules? Or which system sets those rules?
Mhm.
And it's quite surprising what interactions are, because You are now having an interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. System 1 is the picture of the dog. System 2 is you. By looking at the dog, there is an interaction and it results in something. The funny thing is that this is also a picture of a dog. Same interaction, but with a different outcome. And this is the key word that we're looking for: outcome. What is an outcome? It's not just a bunch of facts. No, my definition of outcome is something that drives change in conditions, behavior, or attitudes for people. An outcome always needs to be defined from the perspective of people. If you don't do this, then any outcome is without value. So, you've defined outcome. What can we do with this? Outcome is where everything should start, not with the solution, but we start with defining the outcome. And that's a big challenge. A lot of people will not be able to tell you, hey, this project, what is the expected outcome? This strategy, yeah, this strategic initiative, what do you expect that the outcome will be? Can you define that outcome? We need to save 40% cost. Well, that's an output. That's something that you've realized. But what's the outcome of the fact that you have 40% less cost? Probably a lot of negative other outcomes, like people having been fired. So try to turn this around. Your example, Peter, of, hey, new government in America, this will have consequences. What do I want the outcome to be? Business as usual. Is that sufficient?
Mm-hmm.
Or,
Little growth, little growth.
yeah, yeah. So try to think about the outcome in the form of, okay, what do I want the outcome to be for my people, internal stakeholders and external stakeholders? What, yeah? And then once you've defined this, you will set, okay, how am I going to measure that I'm going towards that outcome? Yeah, you will set OKRs or KPIs that will be able to measure the progress towards that outcome. And by having that discussion, you will already start to work with what information do I need to receive to get this outcome? And information, I need to have an interaction with a system that gives me that information.
Mm-hmm.
So something must have happened to give me that information. Systems need to talk with each other to provide you with that information. So I start to identify what systems I need to get to my outcome. But those systems in themselves will again need information, and other things need to happen. And by going basically backwards, you are slowly, step by step, building your solution. And it could be that those steps are already in place, but you start to recognize, what do I really need to achieve my outcome? And in every step, you can check, do I have all the information that is needed to make this happen? Until you've reached the source of the information and you've got that information flow complete, and you know all the systems, all the interactions that are needed to get there. So that's the core principle of my approach, is saying I'm not starting with what I don't know and start to guess how I get to the outcome. No, I start with the outcome and I work with what I know, which is the thing that everybody always tells you when you're in a panic. Stop panicking, look at what you know, and start working with that. And that's exactly the principle that I'm consistently applying here. And because of the nature of system thinking, that it's not about the parts of the system, it's not about the people in there or about the automation in there. No, the only thing that I need to describe are the outcomes of the interactions between the systems. How they get there is something else. What I'm doing here is I'm describing what needs to happen. And by doing that, I remove all technology or other specific knowledge from the equation, and I create a level playing field where everybody can talk about what needs to happen. Yeah, so that's the key answer, Vijay, to your question. We need a level playing field,
Yeah.
and this is how we can communicate, because it's just one language. We're not introducing any specific domain language. We just describe what must happen, and most important, also in what context and what are the outcomes. And that's what I formalized in a tool that actually starts, if I look at it from a business type of organization, but this is applicable on anything. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
this approach can be applied to how we run schools and education. This can be applied to actually helping traumatized people to bring transparency in the organization, in the conversation, without threatening and having specific elements in there that raises the trauma again. What we're doing here is, for the businesses, is starting with, okay, very high level. I have that outcome. I know my KPIs or OKRs that need to be achieved. Which activities within my organization are being touched, are involved?
Mm-hmm.
And from there, I start to slowly identify step by step backwards what interactions are needed to achieve this.
Mm-hmm.
And in this way, there's no talk about software systems, whatever. This is purely about what needs to happen, what events need to occur, so that I know that I've achieved what I need to achieve.
Can
And
I?
if, yeah,
Is it correct to say that because I am focusing on outcomes, I in fact have no problems. I just have circumstances.
sorry, Peter, you're really quiet at the moment.
Oh, sorry. Um, what I'm trying to figure, or maybe I'm just too far from the mic. Um, since we're focusing on outcomes, are we really saying we have no problems? We merely have differing circumstances.
Yes, correct.
Okay,
And there
interesting.
will still be challenges,
Yeah.
but the challenges will be pushed down to the last level, the how.
Hmm.
And the other benefit of this approach is that because there's no technology in this approach, it's timeless. Because what you're doing in an organization won't change that often. How you're doing it is constantly changing.
Hmm.
So you protect the knowledge that you put in this model, and you can go even a level deeper. When I take order management, I can say, I can actually say, those will be slices of work to get that order requested, to get that order approved. And then you apply exactly the same principle again. Those are outcomes of a slice of work. What do I need to do to get those outcomes? I need to give a command that creates the order. I need to have some sort of an interface that provides that command. And this is more focused on the last step when you're in a software environment.
Mhm.
But the principle is exactly the same when you're talking about human processes. Yeah, you would perhaps name it slightly differently, but the principle is the same, that you look at, I have an outcome, what do I need to do to get that outcome? And the huge benefit of this is that you actually see them as independent slices of work.
Yeah.
So they can be started in parallel. You don't have to wait building one of those slices. You can start working on all those slices at the same time. Yeah, because you know what needs to go in there, the inputs of the information you know, and you
Mhm.
know what output you want to have so that the next slice will function.
Mhm.
And the last step, which I can do when we're talking about software, is that we actually take that model and we can give this model to AI. And at the moment, I can just give this model to a certain AI agent and it generates the front end for me. And I've got my code generator, which automatically creates the backend for me. Because all the information required to know what it needs to do is there. And then I leave it to AI, as I said way earlier, to execute.
Mhm.
And in doing so, we get control back. Yeah, so instead of fighting all the symptoms, we're solving the core problem. We stop thinking in solutions and start working in desired outcomes by having a virtual representation of all the interactions between people and systems. We can see what is needed to deliver value. And then by removing the how from the equation, it results in a level playing field for all the stakeholders, and we can design with only the known facts, and we have no longer bias. Because in this whole process, nobody needed to give an opinion. It was constantly talking about, hey, what do we need for the next step? There's no discussion about which next step shall we take. No, it's purely about what is happening. Yeah.
Mhm.
And that also allows you to quickly find those places in your processes where you don't know what the next step is. So then you know that there's a gap in your organization in how to provide information that needs to be there at a certain time in a certain place. So a simple virtual model of what your organization does or must do to deliver value, and that will validate, will have high level of efficiency because you don't do trial and error, you go straight backwards towards all the
Mhm.
systems that you need. The people can re-engage because we're unbiased and we're outcome focused, so they have a common goal and they just share that common goal. And we reduce complexity, and we allow now for evolving architecture instead of being in a constant changing and disrupting organization. We can actually work those slices step by step and slowly migrate the organization in the direction we need it. And we will still have that ball of mud because we created it and it's really hard to get rid of. But slowly we start to bring clarity in the whole thing. And we've got happy faces and hope. Thank you.
Fascinating. I I am curious. I'd be very curious to see an exercise of this process in situ. So where we have the real conversations. I'd be very curious to see it because I got it. I understand what you're getting at. I think it's an interesting perspective, an interesting philosophy, and it is a paradigm switch. Okay,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
and um, I want to believe that your results are going to be your results, a bunch of happy people with a little ball of mud. But I want to, I'd be very curious to see it because everybody has to buy in. Everybody has to say, this is the way we're going to solve it.
Yeah. That's my challenge as usual. If you don't have an organization with a strategic maturity, it's really hard to sell this because
Hmm.
people don't want this transparency. They don't want to change the status quo. Yeah, this is for
Yeah,
companies that want to control their organization and being able to move their organizations in the direction that they
they
need to
want to go.
go and go fast. The interesting thing is that you recognize that immediately with the very first workshop that I do, where you're talking about let's set up a mission statement for this strategic initiative. What's the outcome? And we start to identify which business capabilities are involved. Immediately, you get resistance because you're showing people what they don't know about their own organization. Yeah, that's the biggest step. And then they need to. I've got one of the big banks in New Zealand as a customer. They were wise enough when I talked with their enterprise architects who say, we don't know stuff. You need to talk with the business. You need to teach the business this.
Yes,
And that's exactly what I want to do.
it's really progressive for even the senior management to acknowledge that. Say,
Yeah,
we don't know it. You need to teach it.
yeah,
Because I always say, I don't know it. I'll pay for
yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's amazing how this, as I mentioned, the traumatized kids in the Netherlands, friends of mine are using exactly this modeling technique to actually help children identify what is going on without it being confronting.
it. Hmm.
And they are now actually rolling it out towards all kinds of veterinarian organizations to prevent burnout. Yeah, to create transparency and identify where are the bottlenecks, where are the rule owners too far away from the context in which the rules need to be used.
Yeah.
All those simple things add so much value. You don't need to use this to build something and get to the outcome.
Hmm.
Just the fact that you have a model of the what
Hmm.
is something that can be a massive tool in your organization because it's not threatening. Yeah, it's
Yeah. Yeah.
it's it's not telling other people what to do. Oh, sorry, how to do things. It tells them what's
What
needed.
to do? Yeah.
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 So I
Yeah,
stop.
and yeah, and also what I like about this concept, Aryan and Peter, it's like you don't need a massive team. You don't need like 200 people. Like you don't need 200 engineers or 100 engineers. Like if you are competing with big, massive organizations like Amazons and the big organizations, all you need is a vision, and you can do it with handle it with this the small and gentle team. Probably like few engineers, like under 10 people or 5 engineers, you can still do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is something I love about the approach that Aryan is getting to.
No, very interesting. Interesting philosophy behind it, and it's relatively easy to articulate it too. How do we achieve the outcome? How do we become happy? Not saying how do we stop you being sad. It is let's focus on the outcome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's I my vision is re-engaging people through simplicity. Yeah, we have so many organizations that build walls of complexity. They think it controls how things are going, but actually it just builds wall around people, and it limits them in their capabilities.
Yeah, and even if and how do you go? Some question, Aryan. I mean, like this can be applied for any business, right? Not just software.
No,
You did it beautifully for the beer brewing business or any business. And in Peter, in your case, if there is a logistics that you want to ship an item, so how can we formalize the process from end to end, and you can basically get it out. And if you're and any business today has software, which is a good and a bad, but I think it's more good for us. I mean, but I think this is a concept that can be pretty much applied for any concept or any business.
Well, there's two things that I see right off the bat is if we're focusing on the outcome and we're focusing on software,
Yeah,
AI is going to execute for us whatever we
yeah,
tell it to execute. Okay, and so we're just telling it we want this outcome. How is it going to happen? Am I right or
yeah.
wrong?
yeah, no, that's
That's right.
exactly it. And I've stopped coding front ends a couple of weeks back. I just give it my prompt with my model and say, I want either a dialog form for this model, or I
It's
want to
beautiful.
have a table representing the data from this output. And it gives me that, and I'm done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice.
It,
Brilliant. That's
it,
beautiful.
yeah, yeah. But coming back to your question about any organization, yes, because you can stop at that first model where you purely have your value streams and your business capabilities, and you're not talking about how you're doing things. So it's not, you don't even have to mention what systems are involved.
Mm-hmm.
You just talk about the outcomes that you want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that applies to anything. Yeah, you can do it for a festival. Uh, I've got a customer who is coming up with a weird concept for outdoor festivals. Can't talk about it, but we're applying it. Within the first 10 minutes, I had three enemies in the room because it showed them that they were not thinking about the stuff they should be thinking about.
That
Yeah,
that happens all the time. I have in one of the companies I'm involved in, I have someone who, to be honest, is in the wrong role and
yeah,
very, very good in a different role. But in the role that that individual is in now, I realize that the Peter principle has happened. You know, he's no longer achieving what I had expected, and even what that individual has expected. So it's very interesting just to see how this plays out because when people find out they've been focusing on the wrong things, there's defense, there's you know, what all those stages of grief, denial,
yes, yes,
and so
yeah,
yeah, then eventually, you know, bargaining and then acceptance,
yeah. Hence
and
my
hopefully you can
question
do that in one
about
meeting.
bias.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So so Vijay, and what did you learn here?
I no, I already loved the way he explained the beer brewer business. So I'm sold already. So yeah, I love the outcome based thinking, and I think that'll take us to the solution more, or rather to the outcome more rather sooner uh, than actually getting distracted in the noise. Right? It's actually staying focused on what you want to achieve at each step of your business, get it done, keep moving forward. I think that's a golden bullet here. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Even if you don't use it, you can use it for validating your strategic initiatives without any cost, because on paper, you can prove if your solution is going to work.
hmm, hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because and the definition of going to work is that we are reaching the outcome, not that we are eliminating the problem.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
Because could well be that outcome will create problems.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. There can be negative. There's never one outcome. Yeah. The original outcome of a strategic initiative will always have side effects that are also outcomes. So what you need to do is build in your KPIs and OKRs that measure all those outcomes so that you can see that on balance, you've created value.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you get the open discussion on a strategic level. What it should all be about is how are we paying the price for this outcome?
Okay. Very interesting.